Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to chapter 6. My life is not my own. So this is another deep chapter of facing some healing and really walking through the healing. Just wait for a moment so I get the nod that you can hear me. Okay, great. Great. Yeah, let's just take a moment in prayer. Just in gratitude for this opportunity to go through this chapter together and see what it brings into awareness. With the willingness to see, the willingness to be open, the willingness to invite the Spirit into our mind, into our heart. As we welcome all that wants to be healed, that's ready to be healed, to be brought to the light. Thank you. So chapter 6, my life is not my own. This section has some journaling in it, which is dialogue with the Holy Spirit through writing, which I encourage everyone to try to see if it resonates for you as a way of being able to be in direct communication with the source of wisdom, with the Holy Spirit within, as a way of being able to heal and see and expose and get in touch with our own thoughts and feelings and beliefs so they can be seen through and released. So this section starts off with personal responsibility, facing some healing around guilt with family and decision making. And gives a fun demonstration of what it is to be really riveted with the Spirit in a section called the Chatroom and the Mouse. And then going through, letting go, facing and seeing what sickness is and how sickness is a decision, how it's a decision in mind. And then walking through the practice of non-compromise, of listening to the Spirit and being guided in the face of guilt and responsibility. And coming through to a miracle story at the end of the chapter. So we start with a quote. Oh no, this is a poem at the beginning. Just a beautiful channeled poem from the Spirit. So this is summer 2005. Listen to the feeling that calls you into silence. Feel my love surrounding you and know that you are home. I am always with you, and as the memory of your holiness returns to your awareness, you will remember me. Wake up, my precious child. So long you have been in such deep slumber, dreaming that we were apart and that you couldn't find your way home. Personal responsibility. I knew my calling was mysticism, to leave the world entirely and be free of all ownership, responsibility, and ties. Even though Jackie had introduced me to A Course in Miracles, I felt guilty because I knew my family wouldn't want me to leave them behind. They would love for me to return from my overseas travels, settle down nearby, and start a family. It was fine to have a spiritual practice and to devote some time to this. But devoting my entire life was not something that any of us had expected. Each step I took to let go of the past was a step out of the world. I was consciously releasing myself from everything, clearing the way so that my direction would be into the unknown, towards God, rather than staying with the familiarity of the past. My father, Roger, seemed to speak my doubt thoughts aloud and amplify them for me in such a way that I couldn't avoid facing them. For example, he wanted to keep my car, my bike, and some bedroom furniture at the family house so that I would come back and use them. He questioned every step I took that wasn't in the direction of being physically close to him. And while I was still going through a development of trust with the Spirit, I felt challenged by the way he spoke to me as my father. A protective role he'd said many times would always be his. Journaling. Kirsten. Good morning, Holy Spirit. I need help. I feel stressed because I'll be leaving to visit my family in New Zealand soon. I want to know how long to visit them, whether I will be going away on trips to hold gatherings there, and what to do with my belongings there. The peace of God is my one goal. It's a lesson from the Course. I want to remember that I need add nothing to His plan. But right now I feel pain and angst as I feel personally responsible for making decisions and plans. And I believe that in the end, no matter what I do, my family will be disappointed. I'm trying to plan around what I think will make them happy, and then I feel resentful towards them at how difficult I believe they are making it for me. I can't win. I also feel the sadness that is underneath my stress. They don't want to lose me, and I don't want to lose them. I'm afraid to let go of my familiar parts of my life, such as my car, my rental house, my bed, and my skis. They were reasons to keep coming back to New Zealand, and now it is clear that my life is going in a whole new direction. I feel attached to the belongings, and part of me does not want to let them go. Holy Spirit, you are innocent. You can do no wrong. Every moment of your life is devoted to purpose. I'm with you every step of the way. You can trust this. Kirsten, I offer my faith to you, Holy Spirit, so that you will place it in the holy place where it belongs, in truth, in God. I know that you would have me relinquish my plans and join with you in God's plan, which is the end of all heartache. I sank into the realization that I simply couldn't work it out myself. The basis of all my planning was avoiding guilt and trying not to hurt others. I had to let it go. I sat in prayer and had a vision of offering a bunch of lilies to everyone that I had involved in my imaginary plans. The tension melted away and a tear rolled down my cheek as I felt their innocence and my own. I was then able to go ahead with arranging my flight to return to New Zealand later in the month. The chat room and the mouse. Some friends started an online chat room called ACIM Gather as a place to invite teachers and students in support of their journey with the course. David and I were invited to hold the Friday night session whenever available. The talks often started with us sharing miracles and adventures from the road, followed by questions from participants about A Course in Miracles and our experiences of living it. Deeper questions from the heart would also be asked regarding how to practically apply the Course teachings to personal struggles and situations. This led to an outpouring of depth and clarity from David. And often in the final minutes, there was a deep stillness that was so palpable, it felt as if we were all in the same room. It was a wonderful way to stay connected with an extended Course in Miracles family around the world. One night, we held the talk sitting at David's computer at the kitchen table. During the talk, Sam ran into the kitchen to show us a mouse he had just caught. I continued to focus on the call. The mouse escaped from Sam's clutches and scurried for safety up my leg and into the folds of my skirt. I was so present with what I was saying in that moment that I remarked, "Oh, a mouse just ran up my skirt," and continued right on with the teaching. Sitting beside David, whose presence and focus is so strong and bright, and knowing that I could be asked a question or called upon to speak at any time, had drawn me deeply into the present moment. This state is a heightened awareness of truth that feels expansive, vibrant, and still. With full attention on inner listening, nothing of the world can disturb or distract away from what is to be heard or spoken. The purpose of awakening is so strong that a mouse running up a leg was like a candle flickering slightly in a breeze and then continuing to shine its light as if nothing happened. A few times when we were hosting from the Peace House, the internet would go out completely at some point during the call. David would just smile happily, put his headset away and say, "Oh, that's the end." I loved to see how totally accepting he was. There was nothing to finish or fix. This was a beautiful illustration of let all things be exactly as they are. A workbook lesson from the Course. Letting go and letting God. Over the past week, my mind had been filled with thoughts about other possibilities for my life. Before I knew it, I was feeling physical pain as well as mental anguish due to my split desire. As soon as I shared my thoughts with David, love and trust returned. The pain disappeared too, because it had come from holding on to my will and resisting God's will for me. Journaling. Kirsten. Good morning, Holy Spirit. I realize I was resisting your will. I think this is all being stirred up because I'm going back to New Zealand soon to apply for a visa to live in the US. It's a big commitment. After exposing all of the doubt thoughts and fears with David this morning about fully committing to being here, I said yes again. Yes to our marriage, to God, to the end of hypotheticals, to the end of loss, and to the end of longing for the past. I heard the ego cry out, "No, you've been tricked. This is not your will." But it didn't stand a chance. This morning I was guided to read about sickness being a decision, an attempt to replace God. I don't understand the teaching in the Course about usurping the throne of God. Could you elaborate? Holy Spirit, you have just experienced healing. Your pain was a direct result of your decision to resist God's will for you. Your healing was a direct result of your decision to let go and say yes to God's will for you. It seems to be in the form of a marriage with David right now. Resisting the marriage, holding on to the past, and engaging in hypotheticals had you in conflict, which is pain. It is this simple. Resisting God's will places God outside of yourself. Then you see yourself as separate from Him. You fear and reject His love because you think you know better. Then, when things don't go your way, you prove to yourself that God doesn't love you. Your pain seems to increase, and reasons outside of yourself, such as the body, are claimed to be causative. In your sick righteousness, you are your own creator, powerful and all-knowing, able to determine why you are in the uncomfortable state you are in. Your thoughts of pain and separation are death. Therefore, your assumed strength and wisdom have proven you right. You sit upon your throne, believing yourself to be all-knowing, when in truth, your supposed insight has brought you only your mistaken perception of yourself. Kirsten, wow. Thank you so much. I accept that sickness is a decision and that it always involves my resisting God's will for me. When I join my will with God's, I'm saying, I have no use for this. I set both my mind and the world free from guilt and sickness. My mind is causative, the world is not. I'll let this learning transfer to all of my experiences. I'm filled with a deep feeling of love and peace. No compromise. Unfortunately for my parents, when I arrived in New Zealand, I was in what I call the metaphysical Nazi phase, which occurs when someone is so riveted on learning the truth that they feel intolerant of anything that doesn't align with the language and metaphysics taught in A Course in Miracles. It's not a particularly joyful or loving state of mind, and it's far from open-mindedness, but it's a phase that most of us go through in our desire to wake up. I was practicing listening to the spirit and not engaging with anything that didn't feel authentic to me. Much of the conversation with my father repelled me rather than attracted me, and I could feel his discomfort. I didn't want to deliberately cause any upset, but I simply couldn't engage in discussions about childhood, traffic problems, and politics. Sometimes I felt so uncomfortable that I wanted to leave the room, which would make him try even harder to connect. I felt so much guilt. At one point, Jackie angrily burst out, "Kirsten, can't you just speak to your father differently?" I went into prayer, truly willing to do what was most helpful. My two worlds were not meeting. I seemed to have two options. Try to interact through a role that I didn't identify with anymore, or stay true to the transformation that was happening in my mind. I knew that I didn't actually have a choice, and so I offered to be quiet. I spent most of the following 2 days in my room, praying and allowing the healing of my mind. I trusted that somehow it was all going to work out. But I knew I couldn't fix or heal the relationships myself. In the quiet of my room, memories from my mountain bike accident came to mind. That crash was the permission I had needed to stop running. Although I had experienced a great deal of physical and emotional pain, the hardest part for me to face was the fact that I was no longer able to play the role of helper, healer, and fixer of everyone else's lives. I couldn't be the ideal friend, sister, daughter, employee, or teacher anymore. This was devastating. It was the beginning of the end of the Kirsten who could do everything for herself. Since the age of 3, I had insisted on being self-sufficient. After the bike accident, I had to move in with my parents and allow myself to be totally taken care of. With both my wrists broken, they even had to brush my teeth for me. It was a complete undoing of pride and independence. Additionally, all of my distractions were gone. No longer able to escape from the thoughts and beliefs in my mind or to control the external world in any way, I had no choice but to shift my attention towards inner listening. I started to notice what increased the pain and what felt gentle and nurturing. Since I was in a position where I was consciously aware that I needed help and was open to receiving it, the Spirit was able to communicate with me directly. This was when my deep, heartfelt prayer for healing began to be answered. A friend gave me a runes guidebook and a bag of rune stones, with which I began to do intuitive readings. I would ask a question about my life and select a stone for an answer. Just having the courage to get in touch with my questions was a very healing step. I could feel my heart opening just by my willingness to turn inward and dare to ask for help. Sometimes I couldn't fully formulate my questions, but it didn't matter. By intuitively selecting stones, the perfect answers would come. I began to realize that something beyond me was doing the choosing, revealing answers to me in a way that I recognized. Through this practice, I felt a growing sense of an inner connection and strength. I was excited to offer the gift of intuitive readings to friends and family, but when my attention went to helping others, I felt the difference immediately. I felt disconnected, lost in an anxious state of not knowing who I was. For the first time in my life, I was aware that I was to give all of my attention to my own healing. My mind training had begun. Now, back in my family home again, I still wanted to assure everyone that I loved them by trying to help fix and heal our relationships. I could feel the pang of abandonment when I didn't respond to the urge to reach out. But rather than being an unhealed healer, I turned to prayer, my course lessons, and chapter 16 from the course about true empathy. The undoing of specialness was occurring, and I trusted Jesus completely. There was no way that I could direct the unwinding from relationships because I was the one being unwound. I continued to surrender to the experience and stay in the simplicity of following one prompt after another as to when to leave my room and when to engage. During this time, my younger brother was living back at home. His girlfriend would come and stay overnight occasionally. They had a tumultuous relationship, breaking up every week or two. In the early hours of the morning, we would often hear her sports car revving out of the driveway and racing off down the road. My younger brother would be emotionally affected, swinging between feeling responsible for her reactions and being angry at her immaturity. Roger and Jackie advised him to end the relationship and shook their heads over why he would continue to do this to himself. But the game changed when they found out she was pregnant. Unable to direct or control the situation, but emotionally affected, especially now that their future grandchild was involved, Roger and Jackie found themselves disturbed by this latest rift, and they came and knocked on my door. I was in meditation. When I opened the door, I felt a soft, open-minded, open-hearted welcome. Roger was in full agreement when Jackie said, "You're the only one who isn't affected, Kirsten. We need your help." I was deeply grateful. Here was the answer to my prayer. By not compromising and by putting the Holy Spirit's purpose first, I was now able to be truly helpful. Roger, Jackie, and I had a beautiful talk about the concepts of mother and father and the responsibility, guilt, and pain that are part of these roles. They were more than ready to be relieved of those feelings. After all, my younger brother was 27 years old. Later that week, I found myself sitting with my brother and his girlfriend, drawing the right mind and the wrong mind out on paper and helping them identify what it felt like to be in each one. Our joining became a workshop that I later shared with the course group. Again, I was being shown how loving God's plan truly is. Stop, drop, and roll. There were times when I found myself unsure of what to do with a repetitive thought pattern. Sometimes it felt like a meaningless distraction, and at other times, inner inquiry would lead to genuine healing. Friends asked me for advice on this, and it was hard to give an answer that felt applicable for every situation. The Holy Spirit gave me a great catchphrase: stop, drop, and roll. It's what firefighters say to do if you catch on fire or you're surrounded by smoke and you can't see straight. It is the perfect thing to do in an emergency. Number 1, stop following the thoughts. 2, drop down to a place where prayer is possible. 3, roll with the Holy Spirit. That is, feel the peace and ask for guidance. If further help is needed, acknowledge that you don't know why you feel this way, but that you're willing to be guided as to what to say and do now. When you have a quiet time to yourself, bring the feelings up again with the Holy Spirit and ask about them. Anger always seems justified in the moment, but when tracked much deeper, there is always a hurt underneath and an unseen belief to uncover. A visa miracle. I had a visa appointment in Auckland City at the US Embassy, and I set my alarm for the following morning in preparation, allowing plenty of time for the rush hour traffic. I was shocked when I awoke and realized that my alarm had not gone off. Jackie, who was accompanying me, had also slept in. We couldn't believe it. We were quickly in the car and joining in prayer. I felt fear arising as we were leaving an hour later than we'd planned. We would need a miracle to arrive at the embassy in time. There was no time for doubt thoughts, and we focused our minds completely on the miracle, giving the whole situation over to Jesus. We noticed the traffic was unusually light, but stayed in prayer, thinking that at any moment we would be hitting a traffic jam. I read through a few of my journal writings and reminded myself that this appointment was simply another opportunity for holy encounters. I didn't have to say the right thing or convince anybody of anything. Each time we rounded a corner or came over a rise, we expected to see an ocean of red brake lights ahead, but they never appeared. It was more like the scene in the movie Vanilla Sky when Tom Cruise goes running through the empty streets. We sailed down the motorway, and at the final approach to the city, we whooped with delight. It was a miracle. We were 20 minutes early. Jackie sent me in for my appointment with a beaming smile. This was bigger than just a traffic miracle. This was confirmation of the entire awakening journey for us. I knew now that I was definitely to apply for this visa and to be based in the US. Everyone at the embassy reflected my miraculous state of mind. The guard on duty was happy, the interviewers were sweeties, and the children waiting with their parents kept me amused with clapping and singing games. Within 10 minutes, I was told that my passport would be sent to me within the next day or two with a religious visa that would give me up to 5 years in the US. I heard later that Tiger Woods happened to be playing golf in Auckland that morning. And it seemed that half of Auckland's population had stayed home to watch him play. I returned to the Peace House on the wings of love. Even though my family wanted me to stay in New Zealand and hoped that I would return soon, it was clear to all of us that returning to the States was the direction for me. Not long after I returned, David and I were invited to visit with friends from the online ACIM Gather group in California. I was about to realize that I had an addiction. Thank you for joining, everyone. Another profound chapter, just showing over and over again how time and space is arranged for the miracle worker. That when you accept his plan, as the one plan that you would fulfill, this is a promise from the Course. He says there is nothing that will not be arranged for you. Your path will be cleared of stones and obstacles. So, very grateful. Thank you.